Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome back Lianne Mandelbaum. She is founder of the No Nut Traveler. Her Kevin MD article is titled Food Allergy Tragedies, the Reality That Haunts Us. Lianne, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
So Lianne has been on multiple times. Go to kevinmd.com/podcast. Upper right-hand corner, there's a search icon. Click on it. You can look back at Lianne's prior episodes and hear her story. Now today, I want to go straight into her most recent article, Food Allergy Tragedies, the Reality That Haunts Us. Now tell us, how did your article come together?
Well, unfortunately, it came together because there were, in a spate of a couple of weeks, a whole bunch of food allergy anaphylaxis tragedies that ended in a fatality, unfortunately. They were all younger people in the prime of their lives, just doing normal activities that young people tend to do. And they were struck down by a bite of the wrong food, cross-contamination, making a mistake. And it really struck me because many times very well-intentioned journalists, doctors, other people, when you are afraid for your child or for yourself, will tell you that the statistics are very low on these food anaphylaxis deaths, and thank God they are. That is correct. But while the deaths are rare, the mistakes that lead to the deaths are really, really ordinary. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. It's not as if this was like some sort of outlandish mistake that your child could never make, or that your child hasn't even made in the past, or you haven't made as a parent. So I really wanted to get that across, because oftentimes we're looked at fear mongers because the stats are, low, but that's really not the whole picture. So that's really why I sat down. As always, I try to reach an audience to create a little more understanding and empathy. So that was really my goal here, and I think I hit it.
So give us some context in the cases that you mentioned in the article. When you say that these are just everyday things that led to these tragic outcomes, paint a picture about what exactly happened. So for those who weren't familiar with those cases.
You had a teen in California, for example, who was going to a school dance, and she allegedly left her auto injector on the party bus. So it wasn't with her. And she had taken a bite of a cookie, I believe, that was said to be safe, which turned out not to be safe. And the bus had left. And then her reaction continued. And the reports that came out were saying that the kids were doing CPR on her in the parking lot as she died, and her auto injector was nowhere near her. And the thing is, I can't tell you, I have a diligent child. He's a teen, but he's diligent. I am a diligent parent. I am aware of the mistakes that happen, and I have lost count of the amount of times that I have had to drive back to where he's done his tennis lesson, or where he's participated in a tournament, because he has left his auto injector behind. Human beings, we're not perfect. Yet, for food allergy people, if you fall below the mark of perfection even once, it can result in a deadly consequence. And so it like, everybody makes mistakes. So I think, going to a high school dance, every celebration in life, whether it be birth or a funeral, involves food. So, we've got food all around us, and expecting everybody to be perfect is just so upsetting to me, that people like, well, it's the person's fault, she left it on the bus, or she took a bite of a cookie, or she opened up a package that looked like the safe package, and it was the same color, but she should have read the ingredients. Well, it's really nice to be on that other end and say that you would always be perfect. I'll give you a great example. I was away a couple of years ago, and I had forgotten to buy some groceries, so I decided to do an online shop. And my husband called me the next day, and he said, "Are you trying to kill Josh on my watch?" And I'm like, "No, I had clicked the wrong brand of ice cream cones, and it wasn't a make contain. It wasn't made in a facility. The ice cream cones that came studded with peanuts." I mean, if he had taken a bite of that, we are all fallible, and we all make mistakes, and we're all human. So I think that a little more awareness and understanding. And also, we've talked about this before in my previous articles, and people can go back. We need auto injectors in public spaces, just like we have defibrillators. It's not even just for the girl that takes the wrong bite. It's for the person who doesn't know that they have an allergy. And stock epinephrine in schools has been used mostly on people who don't know they have an allergy. So, we don't want someone's first bite of food where they have an allergic reaction to be, a fatal reaction. So there's lots of reasons for upped education. The other thing is kids are embarrassed, but it's not just kids. And we've explored this a lot on your podcast as well. People are made fun of when they're brought up. They bring up their legitimate life-threatening allergies. This takes place in schools. It takes place in the air. And of course, I have a special interest in the air because I collect testimonials from families. And it's just very upsetting. And we actually have data to back it up now out of Ruchi Gupta's group at Northwestern. I'm the second author on this study that shows that, yes, people are hiding. Over 13% of people are hiding their food allergy from the crew because they are afraid of repercussions or being made fun of. And, a third is pretty high. We had a pretty robust, almost 5,000 respondents. And that's all leading back to the fact that people don't believe food allergies are real. People think that, you're being a Karen or, a helicopter parent for like checking ingredients constantly. But this is why we do it. We don't get a do-over.
You mentioned earlier when the media reports on these tragic stories, they often emphasize how rare that is. How does that impact your response? Why is that important?
It's an issue because people are like, well, these hysterical parents or the hysterical adult with the food allergy. In fact, I feel worse for the adult because they very well may be extremely afraid, but they don't look like a cute kid anymore and are even less likely to encounter sympathy, both on the ground and in the air. And so when you make it seem like this never happens, and again, it's great that the stats are low, but it would be like, it would be great if such reports actually gave context, like talking about the mistake that led to it, that itself is something any adult or diligent food allergy teen or child can make. And so I think that would really help. I also think when we're talking about physicians, it really help. Okay, tell me the deaths are rare. I'm not saying you shouldn't tell me that, but it's a little dismissive when you say it's comparable to a lightning strike or a car accident because I'm not encountering lightning all day every day, but I am encountering food all day every day, and every time that happens I have the potential to make what could be a fatal error. So instead of dismissing my fears and say they could never happen to you, when you could see any of these situations happening to your child, give me tools. Say, this is what you can do to lessen the statistical, reality that this could happen. Always carry your auto injector. Make sure you have it on you. If it's not on you, if it's in your car, if it's on the tennis court, wherever it is, I try to drill it. I just hope one day that, like, if he thinks about leaving it behind, he's going to hear my annoying voice. Fight for stock epinephrine in schools, on planes. Nobody sticks up. We don't have a requirement for auto injectors on planes. There was just a physician a few weeks ago on Southwest that said she saw her life fading in front of her because there were only vials, and at first they couldn't find a doctor on the plane. This is unacceptable. We're living in 2023. We have the right tools. We have defibrillators on every plane. How are all the physicians globally not arguing to have the right tools in emergency medical kits? They're accessible, they're affordable. There's absolutely no excuse. So I think that, getting people to care about these issues, realizing that it's not just you can't just dismiss it as being rare. There are actions we can take. We can empower patients. We can absolutely fly safely. We can be safer on the ground, but we do need support. We really do.
When these tragic stories come to life, you mentioned some of the responses often blame the victim. Talk more about that, and where are you reading that?
Well, it's often in comments, and it comes from within the food allergy world and outside the food allergy world. And I think when it comes from within the food allergy world, I've thought about this a lot. This is just my opinion, but I think it's because you can't face that this could happen to your child. So you say, I've taught my child to read. My child would never make that mistake, or I vet everything, or I ban that food from my house. So that kind of like accident wouldn't happen. And you know, it's all very good and well until the mistake happens, because a mistake can happen to anybody. Outside the world, people just don't understand how easy it is to make the mistakes. There was a girl
Mhm.
in Florida who died from taking the bite of a wrong chocolate chip cookie, and the package was exactly the same, and she was at a friend's house and it was peeled back, so she didn't see it was the peanut butter one. All she saw was the red surrounding. She saw the brand. Parent offered it to her, you know, and tragedy ensued. So, you know, again, it's just a cop out when you blame the victim. You know, this person is a victim. No, nobody chooses to have a food allergy. Nobody chooses to make a fatal mistake. And again, we're all fallible. To err is human, right? That's a famous quote. I mean, we are all human. I mean, I don't think there's anyone among us who hasn't made a mistake in everyday life. And this is like a 24/7 every day, no vacations from food allergies. So, you know, have a little compassion. And, you know, if the families come forward and they're sharing their story to avoid another tragedy, don't attack them. I mean, they've just buried a child or an adult, and you know, they're trying to not have this happen to somebody else. It's the hostility is so alarming. But I do want to go back one more time and say that when you have mainstream media outlets, Saturday Night Live, I wrote a piece for Kevin MD. That was our last discussion, and no apology. You know, made fun of the kid with the lip blowing up.
Mhm.
Everybody's laughing. I mean, when you start laughing at allergic reactions, then you're not necessarily going to take them seriously when someone alerts you to them, because you think they're funny. And it leads into the stigma that food allergies is not a real disease. And then it creates this uphill battle for people who are looking for reasonable and legal accommodations to fight this uphill battle, because they face disbelief that the condition even exists. And I don't even know, you know, there's so little time in your physician's appointments. Are you even discussing the fact that people don't believe you? You have so many other issues that you have to go there. So just realizing that we face the skepticism, and that leads to people hiding their food allergy, and that could lead to a tragic consequence one day, because you're embarrassed and you don't want to talk about your anaphylactic symptoms happening.
When you read about these unfortunately tragic stories about deaths from food allergies, how does that make you feel, or those in the food allergy community feel? What goes through your mind when you read another one of these stories?
I mean, it just it's so easy to just close your eyes and replay your own experience with anaphylaxis. And you will often replay that experience, and you had a positive experience, but you could, in your mind, you could replay the exact scenario that happened to this person. And it can make you anxious. It's hard not to be,
Hmm.
you know, you are comforted by, again, having tools to empower you. That is really important. Having the auto injectors everywhere, you know, drilling about the ingredients. But it's hard not to feel the death personally. It's really hard. I mean, I feel really sad in my heart. I can't. Thank God. I always think, may I never know. That's really what the first thing that goes into my head is, may I never know. May this never happen. And it's, I could see it happening.
Hmm.
Not the death. I could see the mistake happening that
Sure.
led to this particular death. It's such an easy mistake, or a stupid mistake, or, you know, you should have known better. But, you know, it's that I think that's what's really so gut wrenching, that anyone can picture this happening to their own child. And I think that's why we're often seen as hysterical, because it's like, wait, it's not your child. Like, why? But it's so relatable.
Mm.
It's just so relatable. I don't know how else to explain it. It's hard, like, because as a parent, I pick and choose. The prom one, my son's going to prom this year. The prom one, I told him, like, I don't like to dwell on the deaths, and I don't like to make his allergy about the deaths. And he shuts me out now. He's 17. He's like, I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear. And I actually said, I don't care that you don't want to hear this. She left her auto injector on the party bus. I need you to know that if you are going somewhere, this could happen if you don't carry. You have to carry. So, if there's an actionable lesson, I do try to share it with my followers and also with my own child, because God forbid I didn't share it. I'd like that to be like the thought in his head if he leaves a bus or a car with his friends, like, do I have my auto injector? I'd rather be that annoying parent and be a little more paranoid. At the same time, we do walk a tightrope, not wanting to have a child with crippling anxiety. So it is a balance, but I do believe there's a place for these stories and how we can learn from them and hopefully not have the same mistake happen twice.
We're talking to Lianne Mandelbaum. She's the founder of The No Nut Traveler. Her Kevin MD article is titled Food Allergy Tragedies, The Reality That Haunts Us. Lianne, tell us some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Treat food allergies as a real disease. Food allergy fatalities, it's great that they are thankfully rare, but be aware of why it may affect your patient more than you think. Be careful when you use analogies. They might make the person or the patient feel dismissed as to their worries. Instead, I would implore you to go through strategies as opposed to lightning strikes or car accidents. Realize food is all around. We're just trying to look for reasonable accommodations. We want to keep our children and adults safe. We want the right medications for all people because food allergies are a glowing epidemic. It's important to be kind. I hope that people who are writing skits or movies are aware that portraying food allergies as funny or a weakness, they lead to stigmatizing adults and children with food allergies. We don't question the need for someone in a wheelchair to use a ramp to get on a plane, but we do question people who look normal because they're not reacting to their allergen, pre-boarding a plane to clean the area for someone who may have been eating your allergen. It's a reasonable accommodation. Your patients, your friends, your family, they might be encountering the skepticism on the ground and in the air, and be kind and try to be supportive. This is Food Allergy Awareness Week. So it's a perfect time for us to be discussing this. I mean, you can be a real support and advocate for your friend, for your patient, for your child. Just step up to the plate. It's a legitimate medical condition. It deserves respect. Nobody asks for it. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And be kind. We can always be kind.
Lianne, thanks again for coming back on the show and sharing your story time and insight.